Welcome to That Park Place, where we talk about all the news that should be fun now with even more content. We're going to 4 videos a day starting right now.
All right, folks, welcome back to That Park Place. Happy to have everybody out there. It's a trio today, and we are excited to bring you this news out of Variety, and it's a big one. This by Todd Spangler. Trian's Disney shares have gained $500 or $500 million in value so far this month. Why is activist investor Nelson Peltz still unhappy? Let's find out. Nelson Peltz, the activist investor who runs hedge fund Trian Partners, believes urgent change is needed at Disney. He's waging a proxy fight battle to install himself and ex-Disney CFO, that's Chief Financial Officer, Jay Rasulo as directors, a vote that will go up at Disney's 2024 annual shareholders meeting April 3rd. But what does Trian want? Fundamentally and crudely, we want the stock to go up, Peltz says in a video on Trian's Disney proxy fight site. And yet Disney is up 16.2%, apparently, since that earnings call. Now, we've talked about the earnings call, gentlemen, and we've weighed in on our thoughts as to why that's happening. We think it's part of the proxy war, although we're not here to give financial advice. What do you guys make of this idea that Nelson Peltz says he wants the stock price to go up even farther, apparently? Is that even possible?
Yes, very possible. As we've seen, it's like 110 right now, and it has been at 190, around $200 within the last 4 or 5 years here. Right now, before Peltz decided to come back, the stock was trading at a 9-year low. Now, of course, no financial advice on this channel, and if you are coming to us for financial advice, you are sorely mistaken. Go talk to a registered professional, and probably not one that's on YouTube, in order to discern that. I think Peltz's motives are more than messing with the Disney stock in order to pump it and dump it, as people like to say. I think that he might have some actual vested interest in unlocking the value of Disney stock here.
I also think it's interesting. You guys tell me what you think. I think it's very interesting that many of the announcements which seem to have driven this stock way up, that they're not actually yet materialized. So, for example, when they talked about Moana 2 at the latest earnings call, that's in the future. That's not here. And we found out later that they didn't even have the Moana actress signed yet. They didn't even have Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson signed yet. They have to have this thing done by November. We also found out that when it came to Epic Games and that $1.5 billion buy-in of their stock, that's not done yet. That has to pass regulations. And so there's a lot that's being presented forward as very shiny. It seems to me that there's a battle right now, not just the proxy war, but a battle between Wall Street and Main Street. Main Street, in my estimation, has largely turned away from Disney. That's why we've seen the dismal returns at the box office. That's why we have seen the Disney Plus numbers stagnate in North America. But at the same time, Wall Street is so excited. They don't seem to be bothered at all by that. Vash, what's your take on this?
Well, yeah. So I've seen a lot of theorizing that Nelson Peltz is just part of a big old pump and dump scheme, and this is all just to buy in low, sell high, that kind of whole thing. And I'm kind of like, well, and part of their theory is that he knew that Disney would have to have responses in the form of a big investment to Epic Games, for example, or Moana 2 or whatever, and then get out. But Nelson Peltz has been one of the biggest critics of some of these moves. He's called it, this is throwing spaghetti on the wall, seeing if something sticks. He's called this out publicly on CNBC and outlets like that. So I don't think that's necessarily the case. In fact, he's been very critical of some of these moves. And I got to be honest, it does reek of desperation. This is why we were saying at the time. And now with more information coming out about some of these things, like at the Epic Games thing isn't finalized, for example, or that Moana 2 it sounds like it was announced that day. And that's why you have the head of Vancouver, the Vancouver studio, coming out and saying, oh, this is going to be our big project here. Didn't know we were going to necessarily do this. Like you said, they didn't have the voice cast even lined up for that. And who knows how many of these other things will even materialize, much less be announced at these various points of development. So I don't know. I think he's in it to win it here. I really think, and Nelson Peltz doesn't have a history of necessarily pumping and dumping stock in this particular manner, at least that I'm not aware. Maybe you two are more aware than me.
Well, I would feel more confident. And I'm not saying that Moana 2 is not coming out. I'm not saying that Disney's not going to buy a large portion of Epic Games. I think those are going to happen. The problem here is that Disney often promises these sorts of things. I'm thinking back to Beyond Big Thunder Mountain. That's something I bet most people out here on this channel are going to remember, because that was the promise of all this content that was coming to the Magic Kingdom. And then later on, we found out, well, that was just blue sky. And so this is a strategy from Disney that I think investors, not financial advice, but investors need to wake up to this. Is that
it's a strategy by Bob Iger, though. Bob Iger, the first thing he does when he comes back in, when he goes on the first earnings call, when he is ushered back in, the first thing he does is, we're going to do an Avatar experience at Disneyland. When have we seen anything like that be brought up ever after that?
And of course,
that's always on the horizon.
He always says, and he's quoted in his book as saying that he likes to lead by press release. Let everybody know that is the thing that we are doing, and therefore it gives them the enthusiasm, the motivation, and the authorization to do what they need to do in order to make it happen. I think that move worked a couple of times, and maybe let it get to his head. At this point, whatever is going on in Imagineering, whether or not this is Josh tomorrow, just mimicking the same thing, that there's been too much blue sky from Disney. Pro, did you even get to touch on the fact that NFL media was 100% unaware of the joint venture that Bob Iger announced that day, and is now looking for ways to back out of some of their other contracts, or the fact that now that that joint venture is under scrutiny from the DOJ.
Yes.
And that's running afoul of some of the largest corporations in the United States.
I'm with you, Jonas.
This is Nelson Peltz made a really good case in the video that he put out, which I noticed did not feature a German cartoon duck. So maybe Nelson, you need to go back to cartoons in making your case. Just a thought there. I have a dry sense of humor, I've been told.
Let's read this. Let's read this paragraph, Jonas, real quick, because this gets into that. It's the idea that unless you're following channels such as this, you simply don't know these things. So, for example, what drove investors to rally around Disney stock? Its February 7 earnings report for the December 2023 quarter showed improvements in its cost reductions. Okay, well, how did they do that? Well, because Hollywood was on strike. So they could not produce anything, which lowered the costs, including in its streaming business. Exactly. They couldn't make any Disney Plus shows. And CEO Bob Iger touted a string of new initiatives, including the Disney's joint venture with Fox and Warner Brothers Discovery to create a sports-centric streaming bundle. Now we find out, after this earnings call, that hasn't passed regulatory hurdles that it has to pass, and it may not. Plans to debut a standalone streaming version of ESPN as early as August 2025, which we've talked about that. That's going to have some significant issues because they want to integrate, how do we put this on the channel? They want to integrate you making money or losing money based on who wins and loses, if you get my drift. And a $1.5 billion strategic investment in Fortnite maker Epic Games, which again, they don't have that completed yet. So I guess what I would say is I'm not here to poo-poo on Disney. What I am here to do, though, is we need to have full disclosure and accuracy in the news. And that's what we've been doing on channels we've been doing that on. And I am worried that for this Disney company, that they are, folks, listen carefully to this part. I'm worried that Disney is blowing all of the gas in the tank to get them past this Nelson Peltz proxy battle coming up in a month, 2 months. And then after that, we're going to see a gravely damaged Disney making promises that cannot be kept. That's going to result in a horrific 2024 final quarters and 25. And I don't say that gleefully, and I don't say that as someone who likes to prognosticate negatively about Disney. I say that as someone who's looking at this and saying, can you really make Moana 2 in 6 months? Is that even possible? Can you really pass all these hurdles on these, for example, the multi-company agreement for a sports licensing that has not passed a single regulator? Eventually, Wall Street is going to have to catch on to what in the world is happening at Main Street that has turned toxic against Disney. Vash, your thoughts?
Well, no. What I mean, I think you bring up a good point here, Pro. What happens? I mean, because in your desperation, you're trying all of these things out, and as Peltz said it himself, spaghetti on the wall will not feed shareholders starved of returns. Right? What happens in this desperation to throw stuff against the wall? One of these deals falls through. What if the DOJ turns up the heat and says, you know what, we're not letting this deal go through? Or what if the NFL retaliates and says, well, if you're going to engage in that deal, then the deal between us and ESPN is off, or we're going to, sell our games on a per game basis or whatever. They could retaliate in all sorts of ways. What happens if this Epic Games deal falls through? What happens to the stock price then? And that's the thing. That's the real risk that Disney faces right now. If any of these deals falls through, then all of these things are reevaluated, and Peltz is again put in the driver's seat.
Well said. Jonas, anything to add there before we take a look at the Nelson Peltz statement on this?
No, and I'm very much looking forward to this Nelson Peltz statement.
So here's what Nelson Peltz has to say in regards to all of this. Trian, which is essentially Nelson Peltz, dismissed the Mouse House's announcements as a spaghetti against the wall, as you all said. In a letter dated February 12th, the hedge fund said, among other things, that the Epic Games investment lacks a product roadmap or expected return targets, which is true. We have no idea what this is. And I think it's a good thing. I have said that this is a major positive in my estimation, although I think it's overly expensive for the purchase. But he's right. We have no idea what it is at all. And that the sports streaming venture with Fox and Warner Brothers Discovery likely confused consumers, surprised important content partners, and competes with the company's own services. All of those true, in addition to the fact that it might not manage to pass muster when it comes to government regulations. Frenetic activity in the face of a proxy contest is not a substitute for a well-considered corporate strategy, it said in a letter. Nor is throwing spaghetti at the wall going to feed some shareholders who have been starved of returns for so long. Disney shareholders need the company to consistently perform under the watchful eye of a vigilant board. Gentlemen, I've said in the past that I don't expect Nelson Peltz to win this proxy battle this year. I don't say that as someone who wants him to fail. I hope he does because he wishes to moderate the company and bring it back to the sensible center. However, I think that if Disney is doing this, spaghetti against the wall, blow everything in the tank, spend everything you've got, if they run that strategy under Bob Iger to get past this proxy vote, I think the chances of Nelson Peltz picking up more board seats in the following year as Disney reels with these decisions, and I'll give you one example before we quit, but I think that's a real possibility. Here's the example. Moana 2. Moana is a $1.5 billion possibility with any movie that is made about it. It's the most popular princess franchise they have, and it's not close.
And it's the most popular movie on streaming in 2020.
Flat out. And it came out in 2016. To take that then and say, well, we're going to make a sequel, and that's how we're going to get through this proxy vote. And to make that sequel in 6 months, and to do so under a studio that has never produced a single movie before, with a director who has never directed a single movie before. Not only are you taking a massive risk with that movie, but you risk damaging your most popular princess brand and the most popular movie in streaming, period. And that, to me, is selling out the long term dramatically for whatever you can get in the short term to get Nelson Peltz away from you. Jonas, am I wrong?
No, I don't think you're wrong in any way. This is the fact that Disney is even publicly responding to this on the level that they are. They barely acknowledged Nelson Peltz last time, and now they've had multiple SEC filings of multiple campaigns, multiple videos. They're actually advertising the proxy fight this time because I think they know that they're in trouble and that Nelson Peltz is making a pretty good case. Also, there's the fact that he probably is not going away, even if he doesn't get a board seat this year. Well said. Vash, final thoughts on this one?
Just to add to your Moana 2 analysis, it's not on the expedited timetable as well. I mean, that's the real critical issue here. So there's not even enough time to, let's say, if a focus group's incorrectly, there's not even enough time to make up for that. It's just it's all right. Running towards that November release date.
There's no chance to say. You remember John Lasseter used to look at these things, and if they didn't work, he'd say, "No, we're gonna put this back in the oven." There's no way to do that now.
No. And that's the worry here, right? That's the worry, is that in your desperation to fend off Peltz, you end up losing an iconic brand like that, or its sustainable long-term success. And that's unfortunate. When it comes to Peltz and what he's doing, I do agree with you that the deck is stacked up against him pretty good. And there are rumors or rumblings that he'll release his plan a little bit later here. Obviously, voting's already started, so on the strategy basis, I think it's a fair criticism for sure. That being said, though, I mean, if you look at the current board, the board is supposed to be a check on the management structure of the Walt Disney Company, not necessarily in its pocket, right, or hand selected by it. And that's what you have right here. You have a board captured by Bob Iger. There needs to be a change. I think everybody understands there needs to be a change. Even Disney admits there needs to be a change. So whether that's Peltz and his moderation, or whether it's Disney necessarily responding to him, I'm looking forward towards a change. I just don't know if they'll change in the right direction, based on what we're seeing right here. So we're at kind of this awkward standstill right now, and it's troubling because the future of the company's on the line.
And as always, we are not here to wish for the degradation or the destruction of Disney. We would like to see this company turned around and made into something universal that people can love, and no pun intended with the universal statement. We want Disney to be great. We want them to make content that brings families back to theaters, back to streaming, etc. We just hope that they don't crater themselves even more trying to fend off Peltz. And it's interesting to watch the forces that be in the world that are attempting to push Disney in a particular direction and to stabilize them financially as they do so. Jonas, give us the outro on this beautiful channel.
Oh, yes. Well, of course, like this video if you like this video. If you know someone who is as interested in we are in the subject of Nelson Peltz, Bob Iger, and the proxy battle for the soul of the Walt Disney Company, really he just wants some board seats so that he can get some good information and get some real business analysis in there. Of course, consider sharing this out. And, of course, consider subscribing to That Park Place, which, by the way, now has a Patreon, which we will be linking below, for all the news. That should be fun.
That's right. 4 videos a day, folks, here on That Park Place.
Thanks for watching That Park Place News. For more information, consider checking out www.thatparkplace.com. And don't forget to subscribe, share, like, and send this out on your favorite social media accounts.